The question that I would ask is, if I am to start a business today, if I'm a photographer, an artist, a consultant, a content creator, an engineer, whatever it is, if I'm to start a business today,
Mm.
what would that look like? And when I say today, I mean today in the realities of we're just starting the process of lockdown. So there's a lockdown. There's no human. So all of this is virtual. There's no human contact. People are self they're self staying home. They're working from home and they're not going out. So that's the reality of if I am to start a business today in this environment, what would that business look like? What would I sell? Who would I sell it to? How will I sell it to them?
Welcome to Own the Future, a podcast made for and by change makers where we gain the courage to own our story, the freedom to own our craft, and the power to own the future. I'm your host, Lucas Skrobot, and today we're joined by Ayman Itani. Ayman is originally from Lebanon. He used to lecture in universities in Canada and Lebanon, and now he has a small business where he helps and trains other businesses how to grow and scale. He works with a lot of startups, a lot of SMEs, and a lot of big business as well. And I've been following Ayman for quite some time now. And one of the first posts I think that really caught my memory was him talking about pouring into his children. And I remember this post about him bringing his children to an art museum and kind of him talking with his kids afterwards at the dinner table about some of the things that they learned. And I just was really fascinated with how he was pouring into his children, and it really in a unique way, I felt. And so as everything has begun to happen right now in the beginning of 2020 with the coronavirus, and I've been thinking about how can we prepare ourselves for an unknown future and how can we prepare our children for what lies ahead. I felt like this was an appropriate time to reach out to Ayman and ask if he would sit down and have a conversation here for you and I on the podcast. So without further ado, the episode with Ayman.
So what number episode is this?
This is episode 131. So it's
Well, for
good.
me, it's a sign. Anything above 100, you're good. You're
Good.
committed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. The pod fading starts at like 9. Most people don't make it past 14. And so well into the hundreds now. It's actually 133, but there's a couple bonus episodes that didn't actually get a real number on it. So 131 is the official number.
What's your habit? Is it like once a week I'd record and then eventually publish those? What's your frame of mind to consistently do this over 130 episodes?
Yeah, my habit normally is once a week, and then over the summer, last year I began doing 5 episodes a week, doing more solo, trying to get some more of my thoughts and ideas out there. And that was actually going quite well, except it was kind of overwhelming and flooding everything else in my life. So at the end of October, I scaled that back and went back to once a week doing more interviews. And right now I'm in the process of trying to decide how to kind of ramp up volume of episodes again. And just trying to work out the exact direction that I want to go on that and take that and how to best facilitate that.
Okay. And you have you're in your home setup, is that it?
Yeah.
Because I can see your soundproofing and the strategic light placement. And,
Yeah. I have a whole home setup. I can I'll send you a picture afterwards, but
okay.
because before I was going to places and interviewing people in their office or in their home, wherever we were ended up meeting. But that ended up kind of being very cumbersome, moving lights and cameras. And then I had it all set up in my home to do interviews, and did a number of interviews in my home. And then full 3 camera setup. And then it was even starting to do live cutting of those interviews. And now I'm really only using one of my 3 cameras due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have like a red recording sign for the kids not to work in on you, or how did you address that?
No, I should. I just tell they're really obedient kids, so I just tell them ahead of time, hey, I'm doing a podcast. Don't knock. Don't come in. Normally, they're pretty good about it. And my wife
How old are they?
They are 7, 5, 2, and 7 months. All boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me, it's they understand that I have a call, but they still, if they have a question in their head, they just pop up and ask. And then I move to the other room, and then they have another question. They pop up in the other room, and so on. So yeah, it's I've had those cases as any parent would.
How old are your kids now?
I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Wow.
A boy and a girl.
Congratulations. So, yeah. Congratulations. They're right at that age where you can really begin to mold them and teach them entrepreneurship.
Do you talk to them about content creation versus generation? Because those are, because you're a content creator, and that's why I ask you, because those are topics that I point out to them, saying that, look, you're spending so much time on YouTube and you're consuming. And there's only the 1% that generates the content. So there's the rule of 1, 9, and 99. So the 1% who create the content, you have the 9 to 10% that actually interact and engage, those who comment, and like, and share, and so on, and the rest are consumers and viewers. So I raised awareness to that with them, and how I'd like them to start to think of what would that mean, creating their own 1%, being 1%, and so on. And I've created videos with them and with their cousins and so on. So it's a process, but I'm sure that now they're okay. But then when they're older and they have judgment from their friends and things like this, it's very more difficult. But that's the types of discussions I have with them.
I think that's a really important discussion to have. Our oldest is kind of getting at that point. We don't let them roam free on YouTube. They're mostly relegated to Netflix or movies, and it's just for, maybe an hour or so in the afternoon, and they're just now getting into games. But I think our oldest, he has begun to want to do episodes, want to do content creation, and sometimes we'll do like plays or acts for people when we have guests or something over, and we've had to teach him, like, okay, well, you need to think about your audience. You need to plan and prepare ahead of time. You can't just like goof off for like 10 minutes and expect people to like be interested. So he's kind of like gotten that concept and some of those fundamentals, but we haven't actually stepped into a process of content creation. But I am very hands-on, my wife too, very hands-on with teaching them how to create wealth, how to create finances, not just, hey, can I do a chore and get some money? And so I think we're trying to instill entrepreneurship into them at a young age, kind of through some of those rich dad, poor dad ideas. But I'm interested, what sort of things do you do with your kids? Because you're so intentional with teaching and raising them up in a way that's mindful about the future.
Well, one thing when it comes to finances that you brought up, the reason I bring that up with them at such a young age is it took me a while to understand it. And that's me as a business owner struggling to understand finances and to understand what that means and what you pay for and what you get and how does it cost to make, how much it costs to make something, what you sell it for. So I struggled with those building and growing my business. And then when I talk with other entrepreneurs as well, that I advise throughout the world, and they all have such aspects, and it's difficult for me to influence that or understand that. So I'm trying to get to that understanding earlier with them, at least about what does it mean? What does it mean if something's expensive or not? So in the beginning, they did not understand what money is. So I tried to use it relatively. So we paid 10 dirhams for this, 50 dirhams for that, 18 dirhams for this, and then now they reach a stage where they ask me, how much is this? How much do you pay for that? And so on. And then they say, it's not too much, or it's not too little. I'm trying to have those discussions with them a little bit more after we have this. My wife hates it because she's like, what are you teaching them? Why are you asking me what am I paying for what? And And also, I try to get them to focus on, let's say you bought something that you liked, that you wanted to eat. We paid 50 dirhams for it. Do you think it costs 50 dirhams? It actually costs 20. Is it
Right.
wrong to sell it for 50? Are they stealing us?
Yeah.
And then we go in that discussion about you can go ahead and do it yourself. You need to buy those specific elements. You need to go ahead and do this. You need to spend the time to do this, and then it will cost you the 20 that thing. But or are you willing to pay 50 to get that convenience and that instant aspect? It's difficult. I mean, as your kids get older, you start to do it. But when they were 7, I started to have the money discussions with them. I even tried something, but it took me a while to do this, where in their piggy bank, when they put in money from their from their mothers and grandmothers and presents and things like this, I've asked them to start to write down what that input comes in and so on. So things like this that I struggle with in terms of checks and balances and debit credit and things like this. So those are things I tend to look at. It's not a core focus of mine, but I want them to understand that what you buy doesn't cost as much to make. There's value there to be created. In some cases, it's good value for you to pay. In some cases, you might be ripped off, and you have to decide: am I okay being ripped off for the convenience, or I know they should sell it for 50, but selling it for 200, but I want it now. Is it worth it for me or not? So those are the discussions I try to have with them, at least.
Yeah, we've done something similar. For a while, I started giving them allowance and then teaching them to be like, okay, well, we're generous people, so we're gonna give some money away. We're going to have some money as seed that we're actually planting and investing that's meant for growing. Then we have some money for spending. So we did 10% giving, 40% as seed money, and 50% as, you can buy and spend whatever you want. And so from that 40%, I had them save that, which in thinking of how can I plant these dirhams in the ground to turn into fruit and to multiply. And so then we went to they decided, okay, we're going to make juice. And so we went to the store. I had them take cash and buy watermelon and buy everything that you needed to make fresh watermelon strawberry juice. And then they had to actually go and produce it and weigh it and put it in bottles and then go to their friends and sell it for 10 dirhams a piece. And then we got the money back, and then we looked at, okay, how much was our expenses? How much is our profit? But I think I probably started a little too early for them. They understood it, but it's just like a lot of heavy lifting to kind of get some of those concepts through, especially on a regular basis. But I think maybe when they're older, they might be ready for that.
But Lucas, this is exactly the right thing to do with them when they're a little bit older as well. But that's the core aspect of this, because I keep track of successful people globally, and I listen to podcasts like yours to look at small nuggets, especially when they talk about struggles and problems they had when they were younger and things like this. So a common factor that I see is when they were young, they used to sell. It's usually the American version of this. They used to sell baseball cards. They used to sell lemonade stands and things like this, and so on, which has the same concepts of you buy ingredients, you make them, you sell them, and you calculate and so on. Something I've been itching to do for a while, but I haven't been giving it priority in time, is with my daughter, only because she's older, is I want her to understand, because she likes to do like bracelets and things like this. I wanted to set up an Instagram page for her to do this. I want her to understand that, and we're planning to sell dirt cheap, like 10, 15 dirhams, I just want her to get questions from people, so for her to understand, wait, there's an inquiry I have to answer. I want her to understand that if they're delaying it, if there's a delay from a career that she has nothing to do with, and how does she deal with it? How does she collect it? And how are we selling it for 15 dirhams, although it might cost her more? So that type of aspect that I've been itching to do, I think that might be like a summer project, but it's going to take time from me. It's going to take a bit more, dedication from her as well. You know how kids are; they have a bunch of things to do with their moms and activities and things like this, and patience on both sides to get that done. So that's one of the projects that I'm hoping to get taken care of.
I think that's great. I think that is so needed for our kids, because when I was growing up, my work opportunities were really small, make like 75 cents an hour, just because of my dad was a pilot, so he moved around, living in obscure places, And I started my own pita bread company when I was, I don't know, maybe in seventh or eighth grade. And so I had to learn those things. But I think, and by doing that, I had to learn email marketing from a young age because, you had the internet and that's how people in your town are going to find out. And this is back in the early 90s or not early, but late 90s. And so that I think really instilled something in me of when I was at that young age of entrepreneurial thinking. But when I look at where the market is going today, especially now with Corona, and how the long lasting cultural shifts and impact that is going to have on society as a whole, I think it's really important that we prepare our kids for a world where they are thinking of themselves as small business owners, where they are thinking about their product, their presentation, communication with customers, how to deliver that merchandise, and where's their value that they're adding to their audience. In the midst of then, how do you storytell in an interesting way to connect and motivate your audience and drive them to a conversion, right?
My objective in this is not to help groom them to become entrepreneurs because there's a lot of struggle in entrepreneurship. It's not what you hear on what you hear on stages or what you see
Right.
in press releases about. We opened up a company, it was great. We hired the first guy, he or she were great. The first investor we spoke with, we raised, it was, those are usually nice stories that people share. And there's the real stories of the struggles of building it. Because I struggled building my business. Um, I advise and I built a team around me to do this. We advise entrepreneurs how to grow their business. So we see the struggles, they're real, and nobody speaks about them. That's not necessarily what I'm trying to wish upon them, but what I want to wish upon them is an understanding of how the world works, how business works. Even I tell them, even if you want to become an artist, you need to understand.
Right.
I always tell them, find something you love, and then find the way to make money out of it, because you're going to have to find a way to make money out of it, and
Or even
to make a
teaching
living.
basic sales, right? It's just teaching basic sales that's going to allow them to go into any field and any job in the future.
Even sales is a strong topic that you bring up. Even myself, is like my first understanding of sales has always been the tradition of sales, of somebody who wants to swindle me, to take away my money and not give value. And the typical cliche of what a salesperson is. And it took me a while to understand and to read books and to understand that we're all in sales. I'm in sales. I try to get my kids to do their homework on time, to eat, to brush their teeth,
Right.
with my wife, with the staff I work with the teams, with the customers. So we're all in sales in one form or another. And it took me a while to understand that, and said, no, wait, I'm not, we're all in sales, and then I'm working to bring value. If that value is there, that's great. If it's not, both parties move on, and we're good. So it took me a long time to understand that. So those are things that I try to share with them as much as you can share with, kids who are less than 10 years old.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you've pointed out that entrepreneurship, is quite difficult. It's quite challenging. It's not what everyone on the big speaking tours make it out to be. And in fact, I normally stray away from using that word entrepreneur. I don't put it on my bio. I don't put it in my, in my vernacular. But I like to think of myself as, a small business owner, or really my function is more of a freelancer that kind of bootstraps projects together, impresario, someone who organizes, rather than an traditional entrepreneur who's trying to build and scale and grow, find funding, and then hopefully sell it for 100,000 times whatever they put into it. But I think what I am probably trying to instill in my kids is the thought or the ethos of what it means to be a small business owner. And even if they don't become a small business owner, whether they become a teacher, whether they become an artist, whether they become, I don't know, a dancer, for all I care, still having the understanding of the fundamentals of business, I think is really important, because it's not being taught in the education system. I don't necessarily think it's the responsibility of the education system to do that either. But the education system, in my viewpoint, was set up for the Industrial Revolution and to teach and train people to sit in factories for 8 to 10 hours a day And all that is going to be replaced by automation. Truck driving, by and large, is going to be replaced by automation. And that is the future that I see that we're heading towards. And so what I'd like to hear even more from you is, how do you see kind of this? I mean, we've already been in a digital revolution, but I don't think that it's actually reached the scale that it will reach. How do you see that future shaping up for your children? And what are some of the skills that you are looking to instill in them, similar to what we've been talking about already, but to be able to be successful in the year 2040, right? We don't really know what 2040 is going to look like. So what are some of the fundamentals that you're teaching so that they can be successful then?
A lot of things I look at are from what I see, whether I've had them myself or the other business owners that I talk with. And one area I focus on is their struggle. And the struggle is real. You don't read about it. You don't see that on YouTube. You don't see that on stage. Because I have a lot of those discussions, whether formally via engagements or people who reach out to me, or business owners who are looking for questions, or people I randomly meet over dinner and they turn out to be a business owner. I have good discussions with them. Those are the people, those people I like to spend time with and have my discussions with. And the struggle is the same for everybody, but nobody shares that because it's not the cool thing to do. Even you calling it a small business owner, it's not cool enough. It has to be entrepreneur because we're small business owners. I mean, we've always have been. It's always had traders and all. That's what it has always been.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be labeled the cool part. And the struggle there is what I focus on. Is that there is a struggle. You have to find how to do it yourself, how to read about it, or it depends on how you learn. Either you read about it, or you reach out to others, or you try it. My methods are simple. I read and I work hard. Those are things that when I work hard, I compensate for things I don't know and my shortcomings. So those are things that don't come either way. The second part I focus on is ambition. So one of the discussions I'm having with the kids, because I travel a lot and I'm not with them a lot, so they were saying something about, we understand that you're not here. It's because, you're traveling to make money. And so I was like, well, no, hold on. Before it comes to money, it's something I want to do. I'm ambitious and I can't stay put and fulfill my ambition. So there's an itch for me to scratch. I know now I'm fortunate enough to know what I want. And I'm going to, I feel I have potential. I want to fulfill it. I need to do whatever it means away from you. Yes, money is a core component, but I'm not traveling to staying away from you to get paid better. The priority is for me to do this, and that's what I wish upon them and anybody else, is to find what they like and to figure out how to make money out of it. Which brings me to the third point as well, is it's difficult to know what they would or would not do. There's a documentary on Atari, the game we all used to play when we were younger. And when I was going through it, there was somebody speaking, and they had their job title. It was gaming anthropologist. So the anthropologist is the person who goes back and studies humans and how they interacted in caves, and they look at the scribbles and the drawings and things like this, and they make assumptions and so on. So that person is a gaming anthropologist. And I was thinking, would I tell my dad I wanted to be a gaming anthropologist? Would he tell his dad? It's like, oh, my son's going to go to a gaming anthropologist. Right. Is that something I can understand, or they can understand and appreciate? And just, what does that even mean, and how? And just, would I support my kids if they say they want to be gaming anthropologists? So those are the type of acceptances. That's where I look at, find something you like, even if I don't understand it, and find a way to make money out of it, because the two have to go together. Otherwise, you're a starving artist or a starving type of business in the industry that there's little for you to figure out and how to go and what to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, no one would have thought that we would have gaming anthropologists, right? That wasn't even a thing. And so everything is changing so fast. 1,000 years ago, we all knew what we were going to be. My dad was a blacksmith. My grandfather was a blacksmith. My great grandfather was a blacksmith. And I'm going to be a blacksmith.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do. And we make horseshoes. That's all we make. That's what we're great at. And you know what? There's always going to be horses. We're always going to make horseshoes. we got our thing. But today it's not like that. And I think that's I think that can bring a lot of, with that freedom, comes a great deal of anxiety. And but I like the things that you pointed out, which was struggle. I think a lot of times we like to gloss over struggle, especially in today's social media world. We're all PRing our entire lives. Um, even now, when the whole world is in chaos, it's most of the stuff on my feed is still kind of like this positive side of, well, look at the silver lining in all of this. When I have a feeling that at least for a lot of people in the world right now, there's not much of a silver lining. Um, and so I think that's an important thing to remember, to realize, and to teach kids from a young age how to persevere and press through and endure through their struggles and their hardships, whether it's in school or whether it's in sports or relationships, because we need that fortitude to survive in the real world, whether we are, the greatest entrepreneur, a small business owner, or an artist that's, trying to sell their art. And then the other thing, ambition, because you're right, it's hunger drives a man to work, right? And it's because we're hungry for something that it gets you up in the morning and to go out and to pursue what it is that you're pursuing. If it was just money, you could easily get enough dollars and then watch Netflix and binge on YouTube the rest of the day and just do the minimal amount of work. So how are you instilling ambition into your kids, and then kind of scaling aging up into a young adult, maybe someone that's coming right out of university? What can they do to grow kind of that level of grit in their struggle and ambition in their struggle?
I think the older they are, the easier it is. So I'm looking forward to when they're a little bit older for me to do more with them. And that's why I'm reaching out to some schools that I know and I've done work with in the past. I'm helping them build such aspects out of, because simply I can't do it with my kids today. I'm just trying to find an outlet. So it's just that. And what would help is something that I also draw from my own experience. When I was in college, I had the good fortune of working. And so I had part-time jobs. So I used to do a couple of hours of class in the morning. Then we had gaps, and then we had more classes in the afternoon or evening. So during those gaps, I used to go to work, and I had different types of jobs. Because my background is in computer engineering, they were either with a telecom provider or internet provider. That's what we did, back then. And I took many jobs, and from those jobs, I understood what I liked, what I don't like, what I'm super excited about. So when I was working with the internet provider, I knew this was, because I did work with a telecom provider before. I liked it, but I felt there was something missing.
Yeah.
When I worked with an internet provider, I felt the internet and it will unlock so many things that I did not feel that excitement when I was with the mobile operator, because the mobile operator at the time, I was working with them I was a young kid, I was interning with them to implement internet. But at the time, their priority was always with voice. So whenever it was a busy time with many people, they dropped the internet to give priority for voice.
Right.
I'd sit idle saying, I can't do much. When I worked with the internet provider, it was the opposite, opening up everything there. So that gave me excitement about many different things. I missed things like the guys were very good at Counter-Strike. My colleagues were good at Counter-Strike, playing cards with their friends, with finding partners and things like this. Sometimes I look back and say it would have been nicer to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I was very excited to leave my class and go to the internet provider, to go to that job and things like this. And I've done many odd jobs, mostly computer related, and I didn't like so there are things that I used to learn, like replacing and fixing computers and things like this. And I remember having a discussion with my dad. I told him, look, I have this new job, I have to go help someone with this. It's a paying job, but I don't feel excited about it and so on. He said, and look, from the small things you learn. So don't say no to small things. So that's, that was very clear for me. And I did many small things. So by the time I graduated, my friends in class, they did not know what they wanted to do. For me, it was like, I've done enough in 4 years that I know what's next for me, because I've done so many small things. I've seen so many horrible bosses or good ones. And so I know what to work for, who to work for, what to do, and so on. So that is something I definitely would like to do with my kids. I'm trying to do that with my sister's kids who are a little bit older. I want them to try very small things here and there for them to understand what they don't like. I want them to find what they don't like.
That's really important. I think that's really important to find what they don't like. And it, like you said, it just takes trying a lot of small things to kind of figure out where kind of that passion and interest sparks, where you get hooked. I liked how as you told that story, I just kept imagining how it's almost like the telephone system was good and it had some sort of interest, and that kind of led you a little further down to the internet, which really hooked your mind as it opened up this enormous world of possibilities. And it's not just the internet that does that for people. It could be, if you're an artist or if you're in sports, it's you find something and then you kind of follow that trail and uncover what's kind of already placed inside of you, inside of your makeup, your passion, your skill set, your interests, and then you kind of further hone and refine. And likewise for me, that's what I've been doing. It's when I was in high school, I never thought like I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to essentially do radio. I'm going to do radio on the internet. That's what I'm going to do. But I became interested in literature and stories and reading and writing and communicating, and that's then led to this. But I've kept on progressing and, I don't know if that's the right word, innovating myself and looking how can I, even on my trajectory, continue to grow. So what do you do in order to continue to further hone in on where you're going, the direction of your business, the direction of you as an individual? What are some of your practices to keep on trying new things, or is it, khalas, you're done?
Let's look at the business and let's look at the personal part. So from the business part, what I do is I work with business owners to help them grow their business by building their teams, building their business process, acquiring customers, helping them with customer retention. So it's a lot of problem fixing. And in that type of business, it has to do with executing well. And it took me a while to figure out that to execute well, we have to do so many small things based on follow-up and checklists and the boring, they're not fancy things. But the better we are at those, and that's why these businesses reach out to us. They're bigger than us. They're more funded than us, but they reach out to us because we're able to do so at least better than them.
Mm-hmm.
And that detail and structure of it, those are areas that I feel that when there's a weak point, and whether in my business internally, we still have weak points that we're always trying to fix, or with others, it means lack of structure that works. And that's, so I say, okay, fine, it's clear that this is not working. It's not because Ayman is running this or Lucas is running it. It's because there's a process behind him or her that we're expecting Lucas to come in and solve it magically. Right. And that will never work because there are things that need to be done with or without Lucas somehow. Or if Lucas is great naturally at doing this, but then we lose Lucas to something else, then we start from scratch. So that aspect from business perspective, so from an area of improvement, that's always one of my first go-tos from areas of improvement. That's one. On a personal level, for me, there are things that I read on the internet. I see videos that say, lean into your strong points and don't focus on your weaknesses and things like this. So for me, finance and accounting in my business is a weakness. I have an MBA and still I feel it's a weakness for me to run the business. Mm-hmm. And I've tried in-house resources. I've tried outsourced resources. I've tried hybrids and things like this. And I've done so many mistakes along this. And then it took me a while to understand that I have to learn what I want from this before I ask somebody else to do this. So when it came to the financial part, I hired an excellent firm. They're specialized in what they do. I did the mistake of saying, I thought this was done. I left them for 8 to 10 months, paying and doing all of that. And then in 10 months, I said, you know what? I should probably take a closer look at what they're doing. And then I looked at it. They're doing everything right, finance and accounting wise, but it has nothing to do with me as a business owner. To what do I need to build this, to fix this, to what look at my revenue streams and profitability and things to decide on and so on. And then I had to sit down and learn what it is I wanted to learn myself. And that's, unfortunately, nothing comes other than long hours and trying and not working. Those are the two things that I compensate for with weaknesses. Now I know what I want and how I want it. I'm not an expert, but I know enough of that, of what I need. And when I work with people on something on this, I work in a framework of what I want or need, but I have to learn it first.
Right. So it's not that you're, because yeah, I've heard that saying too. Lean into your strengths and forget about your weaknesses. But what you're saying is you can't hire out your weaknesses unless you know a system and a process and what that weak point needs, how that's supposed to function in order to serve the system that is in. And if you don't know what you want out of that before you go and hire someone, it's not going to matter. It's just going to be money down the drain, and you're going to end up with the job done, but it's not going to actually fit into to spec or to with Six Sigma into the business and the process and the need of that aspect, whether it's communication, whether it's social media, whether it's your finances. And I experience this too. When clients come to me, they're like, we need social media. We need a website. I'm like, well, okay, why? Well, oh, yeah. Well, why do we need that? I'm like, well, who are you trying to talk to? They're like, yeah, well, what do you want that target audience? What's your goal? And they just look at me. They're like, I didn't think about this yet. And, so as a consultant come in and I'm asking those questions too. I'm not just like, yeah, we can build you a website, because otherwise the client will come back to me and say, this isn't what we needed. Well, just like you came back to your finance clients, said like, this isn't what I needed. It's not fitting my goals, but that's not necessarily their fault. They were doing the job as they thought. So I think that is really excellent advice. So you have to, which what I'm hearing you say is you have to know at least the architecture of what you're trying to hire out for and the system what you're hiring out for, so that you can see whether it's fitting in growing your business or if it's just another cog in the wheel.
That was an excellent rewording of it, and for you to know what that architecture is, it comes from hard work and mistakes. So hard work meaning reading, trying, asking, and so on, and then mistakes of trying something that doesn't work, then you try something else, and so on, until you say, okay, this is my framework, but I can't do it all alone. Hence, I need to hire internally or externally to continue to do this within the architectural framework. And that framework is not set in stone. If somebody comes in with better ideas, we'll tweak it and forward. But the core is yours, and you're driving it. And so that comes from that. And the skill set personally that I learned is because I've had cases in the past with many of my colleagues. That was before I started my business. We were all employed, and they left to do better jobs, better paying jobs. So they're better paying jobs, less hours, and in the eyes of others, they were doing better. And I can see it when they speak with me, how sorry they felt that I'm in a different job where I have to work. I work longer hours and I get paid less, and they get to be more relaxed and so on. And then I had this with many of people I know. Fast forward 3 years, they have to move on to another job for a reason or another. And then they can't, because they're stuck where they had a comfortable job for 3 years, but they didn't learn much. So they're out of the market. So they're somehow out of the market, out of the skill set needed for that market in only 3 years. And they're trying to find a job, and then I want to help them find a job, but just there are so many things missing that it's difficult. So that's why they're struggling to find a new job, because unfortunately, when you relax for 3 years, there are no skills. There are less skill sets that you have. And that for me was definitely a clear indicator for me on what I need to continue to work on a personal level.
Right, especially when everything's changing every 6 to 18 months in technology, in this fast moving market. If you're kind of leaning back and just coasting for 3 years, it's not 3 years like it was back in 1950 or 1960. That 3 years is like 15 years, right? And so, I guess one of my questions, kind of going off of building kind of that team around you, is what what are some of your tools or advice that you give startups, small businesses, freelancers, or artists who are looking to begin to staff those weak points and build a team around them so that they can be more than just a freelancer, more than just kind of a solo shop? How do you teach some of those fundamental team building um, things to your clients and or to your kids?
One thing I look at a lot in the hiring process, whether it's for myself or when we're hiring for others, I feel a common mistake is people look for skill set as the first and primary thing. It's important, but that's not the primary thing that I look for. I look initially for willingness to learn,
Mm,
willingness to learn, and being open to working hard. The third is the skill set, because the skill set can be learned. Because I've had many cases where somebody's very, very skilled, but they want to do the least work possible. They're not open to working with others. They're not open to changing how they want to do work. And though they're very talented, within 6 months or a year, you can't continue working with them. And I've seen many others who don't fit. They don't fit, so they're in a job, as in they're not from the right schools. They don't have the right background, right experience, and on paper they don't make sense. But then you see the results that they do and how fast they've learned and how they've changed things, and now they have their own teams. So they start a member, they have their own teams that report to them and so on. And then you see that that doesn't come from the skill set. That comes from,
right.
am I willing to learn? How hard am I gonna able to do this in order to learn this aspect? And how well I can work with others. And the part about the working hard, and that's often entrepreneurial aspect. I remember once there was a discussion I had with somebody, and he was saying, "Ayman, look, it's your business, and you've chosen to work this hard." I said, you don't know me enough, but this has always been me by default. When I was employed, it was always long hours, weekends, and so on, because that's the mode I work in. That's what I learned. That's what I do. I have a lot of fun. I do many things, but that's my default. So it's not like I switched that on when I opened up my own business. So that mindset of, let me serve my time from 9 to 5,
Right.
5 to 5, I'm walking out
Yeah.
because I need to serve my time. That's when there's something definitely broken.
Well, it goes back to exactly the story that you told earlier. We had colleagues who they went on to a cushy job, they coasted for 3 years, and then they went back into the market and they didn't have the skill set to find another job. But that's because something fundamentally was missing, which was the hunger, the ambition, and the drive to learn, the drive to add value to the system that they're in and continue to improve and add value to their own life. And you're saying that when you hire for skill set, in time, that person, if they're not hungry, if they don't have kind of that ambition in them, will end up coasting and not fitting your project. Whereas if you have someone that's continually learning and hungry to learn, that they're going to succeed in the long run. That is what I'm hearing you say, is that is the skill that is going to be traded on for the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's that hunger and drive to learn.
And absolutely, and when you add on that something that you really like to do, then you're off. Yeah, then you're set. To give you an example, I had a project once. It was 1 week, so they wanted me to do 5 days. It was 5 days. It was super well paid. It was we're looking at $25,000 for me to do 5 days of work. And I was sold on concept, and I traveled to that country, and it was totally something else. All right, so I was sold on the concept of working with the top executives,
Yeah.
had them understand how to digitally transform a company over intensive 5-day periods. And I was told there were meetings to be set with different departments and things like this. And I got excited because that was a very big company, super one-off. That means it's not a money thing for them. They cannot transform. It's about, are we deciding to do this? And I assumed wrongly that involving me with those top brass, that means the top brass are looking for external ideas from me and from others,
Yeah.
and then they have the unlimited resources. They can go ahead and execute on that. So that was what I was excited about. What I ended up doing there for 5 days was just chasing them from place to place. I felt like, you know how it is where
Oh my.
where you're trying to sell somebody when you see them in malls, markets, where somebody's chasing you to give you a flyer or a perfume to try or something like this, and people ignore them. And so that's what I felt. And all I could say was like, I'm just be patient. You've committed, and there's a lot of money. It's $25,000, 5 days. Commit. And then I was thinking, would I be paid? Would I accept a job? If they offer me a job to do this for the next 3 years, very well paid, would I do this or not? And I was like, it would be very good money, but no, I can't. I couldn't do 5 days. So I could definitely not commit to doing 3 years, even if it's greatly paid, because there was something completely off there. I felt so not in my element, so not in my productivity, so not in my potential. I was like, just I could not do this. So many people take those jobs because they're well paid, but then they're miserable and they don't learn much. And fast forward 3 years, you're unhappy. People around you are definitely unhappy. They pick on that, and you have more money, but just where's your skill set and where's your happiness?
So what happened at the end of this? Did you bounce out of this project early, or was it if you finished it?
I don't change. When I commit, I don't change. So even if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, when I commit, I don't change. I complained. I'm trying to get, I said, I don't want to chase people. At least, set up meetings like you promised you would. But no, when I commit, I commit. But it was always only 5 days, like 5 days, 5 days, good money, 5 days, good money. Just go through this. But then, that was.
Was there a chance that they wanted to sign you on to actually execute that project for the next 3 years? And is that why you were thinking, would I want to do this for 3 years?
No, because I thought, because I had time there to think about, I was in a situation where I was thinking about, why am I so unhappy? I'm paid well. I'm doing this for 5 days. So it's a job I'm committing to. It's a good paid job. I can do this well. They don't want to do this. I could have said, it's their problem, not mine.
Right.
But I felt unhappy. I could do more I felt, so I was like, why are you unhappy? Why is this bothering you so much? And then I started to think of, what if I'm in a job? What if I'm offered this? What if I do this? So that happiness part that trip was clarity for me. It's saying, I know that when I'm happy, when I'm not happy, and not everything I do it makes me happy, but a lot of it does. And those that do not, I try to limit them to a certain damage period of time and then move on to something else.
Yeah, I think, and that goes back to something else that you've also been saying, which is it's the system and it's the processes that are underlying an organization that affect someone's ability to perform or not perform, that affects the longevity of it, that affects people's joy levels and enjoyment of even working with that person or that company. And so did you advise and say, hey, here's another potential contract where we could fix some of your internal health problems? Or did you just walk away and say good riddance?
I did not pursue things further because it was clear to me that it was something that they just, there was a box that they wanted to tick that said, oh, we got a specialist and we talked about this transformation, this digital changing part, and that's done. So I sensed there was no interest or commitment to actually do anything about it. And in those environments, there's little I can change. So that's why I did not feel that there's something there. And on the happiness part, what a lot of people misunderstand is what they see on YouTube, being that beaches and family, just
oh man, that's horrible.
Whatever that's
so silly.
Yeah, because for me, I'm very I work hard. I work 20 when I do 12 hours a day and 6 days a week. That's my default.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm overwhelmed, but that's me. That's how I'm structured. That's what I look for. And that time I spend there, I want to be happy doing what I'm doing to a certain extent. And when I'm not doing that, I have my other interests, which is reading about digital and social and how people interact with that. I read about entrepreneurship. I read about those elements. That's me. And I sensed this, just to give you a story about that, Lucas. I sensed this. I remember once, very clearly, I still remember this example because I've always been into digital and how it affects businesses and people. That's what has always been my default. I remember I was in college and my girlfriend at the time was complaining that she doesn't see me a lot because I'm working, because it's in college, I have classes, and I'm
Right.
working part-time in these different jobs.
Right.
And then I was on campus on the stairs in the sun reading a book. The book's title was called Being Digital. And I remember, I was reading the book, and she came and she's like, she was so upset that I was even reading on my personal time about something digital. That upset her so much. And then I remember my reaction was like, why do you think this is off? And that gave me clarity that this is me. This is what interests me, and that's what I pursue, with or without anything else. So those are the aspects where I see happiness. When I say happiness, I'm not saying don't do work and don't just spend time 100% on your hobbies and whatever it is they see on YouTube, where people are on a beach somewhere to make money while you sleep. All of that nonsense.
Garbage.
It's just about finding something that you like and finding a way to make money out of it.
So my question then, I think the next logical question that comes to my mind is going back to this idea of processes. It's going back to these ideas of systems, and right now, everything around us is collapsing because of COVID-19. Right? Just yesterday, Emirates declared that they're shutting down most of their flights. We're at March 23rd. If you're listening to this far into the future, and what I was thinking about last night was that we live in a highly, highly complex system called the global economy, and we don't realize how fine-tuned it is, and how the supply chain is just magnificent by the fact that we have fresh eggs and bread and raw chicken in the refrigerator in the store every day. That is a sign and a wonder. It is a modern miracle that we take for granted. And oftentimes we then complain about how we need to fix the system without realizing that actually the system is a highly fine-tuned machine that's very delicate. And we've seen how it is so delicate that, this once in a centurion, once in 100 years event has stopped everything effectively. And we're going to recover. I do believe that we're going to come out of this. But my question leading to this is, how can we as small business owners, how can we as artists, how can we as maybe we're school teachers or in sales, how can we begin to build robust systems in our life that are simple, but that also can safeguard us from the future and create an environment where we're better able and better prepared to sustain whatever is coming over the next 2, 3, 10 years. What can we do in this period when everything's stopping to rebuild some of our personal systems for long-term success?
I would say one of the first things to look at as a small business owner now, and when you're looking at how the economies globally are stopping with regards to coronavirus, is your cash flow. That's the aspect now that is very critical, because any business relies on others to pay them, whether they're customers, B2C, B2B, others to pay them, and then you have your own burn of your own staff, your own rent, your own online services that you pay for, things that before that you wouldn't pay attention to. So the most important part now is cash flow, because you're unlikely going to be paid by your customers, because everybody's going to hold on to their cash. They're going to say, let me worry about this a little bit later, and so on. And assuming they're still in business. So the first thing I would look at, saying, what can I stop now that will affect me in the short term, but not in the long term. So, for example, discussions I've had with some of our customers that I know that they will struggle to pay us because the industry is affected. I don't expect them to pay us. So I had an honest discussion with them, saying, look, I know you're strongly affected by this, and it will affect you probably unlike paying us. So I said, let's have a discussion. I'm open. Let's stop what we're doing for you guys over the next month, 2, 3, 6, until this is resolved.
Yeah.
There are things in arrear, but let's stop. So for me, I stop the bleed somehow. If in 6 months they go out of business, that means whatever they still owe me is gone. If they're still in business, eventually we'll get paid. But what I look at is over the next few months, whether it's the people from my staff or the freelancers we work with or third-party systems we pay for, that do this, we stop the bleed, because today as a business, you can't fund other people that will not pay you. And that's any business now. Everybody's holding on to, let's wait and see. So the cash flow part is definitely the most important part. And then the second thing I'd look at is, because you're trying to look at what the next step would be in the future-wise, and when I say future, I say it's 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Would be, what are services that you can provide that assume a no-touch aspect, so that are virtual. It's not easy, but I would assume, so I'm looking at doing this internally in our company and with other customers that we're advising, is we're assuming this is a default. I know it will all be fixed, but what I'm looking at, saying there's a tier of services that will be fully done online. That it's paid for online, it's executed online, it's provided online. It's still one-to-one, like our podcast now. It's being done one-to-one video-wise and so on. So nothing changed. It's just the touch point of it has changed, but it did not affect that I've dedicated time, you've dedicated time. You've prepared well. We had this topic and we're discussing and we're bouncing off of each other. So that doesn't change, but the mode of communication, the touch point will change. It's not. I prefer to be there in person, and both of us would read off of each other further. But it's 70-80% there, and that's more than, so done is better. So one is better than zero. Done is better than perfect. So introducing services that assume this is our world over the next 18 months.
Yeah.
And what do they look like? They might not be the same revenue that you had, but still you have to assume that you need some form of revenue to continue to change as a business. The same way the virus is in us and will mutate and our bodies will adjust for it.
Yep.
Our businesses will adjust and mutate somehow to the new reality of this.
Yeah.
So minding your cash flow now, that's the first immediate step that I would look at. Even go through I would look at your online payments for online systems that you use that you might not longer use, have honest discussions with customers about things like this and so on. And the second part is trying to find services that are no touch, because that's definitely one of the realities that we have now, and that will continue after we evolve out of this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, you look, and that's what Emirates did effectively by grounding most all of their flights, was that they're realizing, well, every time we fly, we're losing money, we're bleeding money. So it's better for us to ground nearly all of our planes, ground nearly all of our staff, reduce payments, and be able to retain these people for the next however long this takes, rather than having to try to push forward, keep empty flights going where they're losing money with each flight they fly, and then they have to let a bunch of people go and they suffer further in the long run, which is, so I think, what Emirates is doing and what most major airlines have done by shutting things down, it makes sense, because they're doing exactly what you've recommended, which is stopping the bleed. And then, just like out of the Great Depression came sayings like a penny saved is a penny earned, and you had people who were saving every single tin can and plastic bag and hoarding everything because you never knew when you might need it. I think there's going to be systemic cultural shifts and changes that were already happening because of the digital age that we live in. But like this virtual no-touch services that still have kind of that feeling of having high touch, still have that feeling of, okay, I have this emotional bond, this emotional connection with this company or with this individual, even though there's not a physical presence or a physical exchange of a handshake or a hug or a product or a service. And so I think there is, whether this lasts for 3 months, hopefully not 18 months, but that's what some people are saying, that we will see a further shift towards digital systems, products, and services as we move forward into the next 100 years. But my question then is, because I know you teach this, you're great with this. You've taught and lectured in universities on corporate communication, on content generation, on content consumption, distribution. How are you recommending And what are some of the principles that you're teaching to small business owners, startups, to build that rapport, to build that emotional connection and bond with their audience, with their clientele, with their investors? What are some of the core components that you teach for someone to do and even begin to implement now so that when they come out of this, they can really be successful in?
I think one core component is openness, being open about where we are now and where we're heading. Because the example I gave about having discussions with people who pay us for our services, I know some of them are good, but I might be, I might be hurting our long-term revenue by stopping services now. But I want to be open and have a proper discussion with them about where we are. Can you pay us? Can we pay? Can we service you? Because I have cases as well where people working from home and things like this, so it's different. Can we service them? So that openness, saying, look, we plan to do this. We can't do this. That openness, I feel, is definitely a driver for proper, healthy, long-term growth. Although in the short term it hurts you, but long term, when I say long term, is when we come out of this in 6 months or so. Openness is definitely one aspect. I think the second part is, it's going to take a while though, is accepting that things are different.
Yeah.
So for me, if I want to take it on, because I've continued with our growth plans, even through these troubles and so on. But recently, one of our customers who I felt were untouched were severely impacted.
Really?
And that got me thinking that, wait a minute, you should probably re-examine where you are. I thought I did. And I re-examined it again. And I said, okay, let's look at this one more time, and then look realistically at it. So, and then this is not me being honest externally, it's being honest internally, saying, I'm going to look really at the business. Do we need hiring this person now? Does that make sense? Stopping this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And so that acceptance of that I'm different, the business is different, what we're doing is different. That acceptance of it beyond the world has changed, we haven't seen this, and so on. So no, the real acceptance of saying, look, it's different.
Yeah,
it's done. That acceptance takes a while and a couple of incidents here and there, but that acceptance, I feel, will be important for a small business owner to rebuild, because we all have to rebuild that.
Well,
we all have to rebuild something else.
Let me pause you and ask a clarifying point on your story. So you had a client that you thought was unaffected, but then when you actually talked to them, you found out that they were affected, which that caused you to go back and look at yourself and to look at your growth plan and evaluate whether you could progress in the way that you thought. Is that right?
The trigger point for me was a detailed email that they shared with their staff. The founder sent a very heartwarming, open email to all of his staff that I was included in. And when I read that, and I know how much that founder worked, I know how big their business is. It's across multiple cities and multiple currencies, so they're not easily touched.
Yeah.
Like a small business owner would be generally. And that for me was a trigger to that open and heartfelt email was a trigger to say, look,
wow,
let's take another look at this.
Wow. And so, okay, yeah, I mean, it is quite frightening, in kind of a splash of cold water when you realize that it's not, I mean, yes, small businesses are going to be greatly affected, but it's also big businesses that are multinational across the globe are really being hit because everyone is stopping spending because they do not know how long this might take. And, small families, they are all doing the same thing that every business owner is doing, which is cash flow. They are stopping every bleed that they can, minus their Netflix accounts. So acceptance acceptance that things are different. Can you continue to like unpack as you in your business, as you've begun to?
Everybody thinks, Lucas, everybody thinks this is going to end in a few weeks, and we're going to come out of this, going back to our restaurants, going back to our work, going back to this. I've been keeping a close eye, not on the news, on countries and who's doing what. I've been keeping a close eye on what others who specialize in things I don't understand. They try to cure polio. They try to cure other,
Right.
pandemics that used to be widely affecting humans. That now is just, I take my kids. They take a small vaccine. For us, it's a very simple, boring, routine thing that we do with a doctor. It was a big deal in 1918 or in the 50s or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I look at their feedback and so on. The pattern I look at is it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to fix this.
Yeah, at a minimum.
Antibiotics, between the cure, between the vaccines, between the testing. So any form of normalcy is not in a month or two. It's in 18 months. Of course, we're gonna have ups and downs. So we're gonna have better situations in these 18 months. I'm not saying it's gonna be like this for 18 months, but for us to walk out of this, it's like I got in a big car accident, and looking all around, I need time to recover before I'm able to go and run with my kids. So in 3 months, I'll be better. I can eat, I can walk, I can socialize with my friends, but I can't go out running with my kids. It's going to take me 18 months to get there. So that's that acceptance of there are 18 months before I can resurface. What do I need to do over those next 18 months to do this? If we finish in 6 and I plan for 18, I'm great.
Yeah.
But if I plan for a month and I'm done 18, I'm gone.
I have the same thinking as you. I have not necessarily been looking exactly how things are, how COVID is growing across the earth, but I'm looking and seeing, well, what's government's responses? What are corporations' responses? What are the doctors and the scientists are saying? And so I think the most encouraging thing that I've read, which is really going to be a miracle, is that the virus mutates and actually ends up killing itself off, which is a real possibility. It's happened with SARS in the past. But that's like the best case scenario when we have an act of God on the earth, saving mankind from utter annihilation and saving the economy from utter annihilation. But the thing that I have consistently heard is that even if they get a vaccine today, it's going to be 18 months before that's in production. It's going to be 18 months till all the clinical trials are done and there's enough vaccinations for us to be able to emerge. And that is a very long time. We might have a reprieve, as you said, in the summer. We might have a reprieve, but we're just not sure what is going to happen. And so as people are sitting down and having that real face-to-face kind of acceptance moment of we are in a different age, we are in a different time, and we need to make changes. I mean, the question that I want to ask is a question that I know no one has the answer for, besides stopping your cash flow, stopping your bleed, and figuring out how to create innovative, no-touch virtual products and services. But what are some ways that people who are really scared right now, photographers, artists, are some of the people that are coming to my mind that are really wondering what the future is going to hold for them? What are some of simple questions that they can begin to ask themselves as you began to ask and look at it in your company, in your business, of kind of small action steps that they can begin to take to put a plan, an 18-month plan together?
The question that I would ask is, if I am to start a business today, if I'm a photographer, an artist, a consultant, a content creator, an engineer, whatever it is, if I'm to start a business today, what would that look like? And when I say today, I mean today in the realities of we're just starting the process of lockdown. So there's a lockdown. There's no human. So all of this is virtual. There's no human contact. People are they're staying home. They're working from home, and they're not going out. So that's the reality of if I am to start a business today in this environment, what would that business look like? What would I sell? Who would I sell it to? How will I sell it to them, and so on. So that would be it. Instead of saying, let me wait and see. I have some savings. I'll wait and see, and then it will solve itself, and then it will go back to normal, and so on.
Yeah.
So that's the part that scares me. Of I want to wait and see, and it will be solved in a month or two.
Mm-mm. I think that's great. It's literally essentially closing your business and essentially opening up again as like
this acceptance, saying we shut it down, we're going to start over again. What would that look like?
What would that look like?
I used to make 500,000 dirhams a year. Now I'm going to make 200,000 dirhams a year. That's my first step. I have to accept it that I've found many ways to make 500,000 dirhams a year. Now I can only find the first few things that can make only 200,000 dirhams a year. But that's better than my zero.
Absolutely.
I won't see that.
Absolutely.
And then once you start down that path, then you figure out ways to unlock it. The same way when you started, where you had one project, it was you knew what to do, and then one project brought another, then you had an employee maybe, then another project, and so that's when you figured out. We all started our business, starting doing something that we're no longer doing now. So that is the part where we start today. We're shutting it down and booting it back up. What would that look like?
Yeah, I think
it's better. You have more experience now. You have some reputation. You have some money. You figured out things before that you can learn and start new.
That's exactly right. And when everyone started new, we started with a set of limitations. We started with this, we have a certain amount of resources, not necessarily just financial. We have human resources. We have relationships. We have our skill set. We have our EQ, our IQ. We have where we live, the people that we know. So we have all these sets of limitations that launched us into those businesses. But it's so true that if we kill that in our mind, because I think so many, myself included, can get hung up on the way that we used to do things, because this is just 3 weeks old, depending, China, it's 2 months old. But it is so fresh in our minds that we literally have to pretend that our old world is no longer a possibility, and we now have to look as if we are in an incubator with saying here's the exercise, these are the limitations. What product and service can you launch into the market within the next 2 to 4 weeks? How can you launch that into the market? And how the question that I've been thinking is, what is the products and services that people are going to need in this time when they're not spending money, when they don't have a lot of extra cash flow? Where are they going to be spending money, especially ways that they're going to be spending money that's going to enable them to get more money? I think is going to be one real area where people are going to win in the season.
That's another very good question to add to your list of questions. So what would people spend money on in such a scenario? So that's also one of the, because you're looking for questions for the business owner to ask. And that's the only way. So for example, I've been wanting to build, I feel there's a need in the market for assisting people who want to sell online using Instagram and WhatsApp and Shopify and so on, how to get started right, or if you got started, what to do. So I have a model in my that I've been working on for a while, and it had a big offline component. I've taken this opportunity now to restructure and redesign it, assuming it's online, and I have this mindset now that even if things go back to normal and after a certain period, there's a version of this retail model that will always be online.
Yeah,
I might have a version 2 of it, like a deeper version of it that's online, offline, but there's a default model that's online. It's going to be, video like this. You're going to get the same value, the same aspects, but it's different. There are different touch points. So we're going to still help you set up your online stores, help you accept online payments online, even if you don't have a bank account. What to recruit, how to target, how to budget. All of that will be done, but it will be done without the physical touch. It will be done with an online part of it. And even if things are unlocked, there's still going to be one of the core offerings it's still going to be online. That's the type of thinking that I'm trying to get my mindset into.
Yeah, and that really is. We always knew that it was the way of the future. Over the last 10 years, we've seen everything shift so suddenly to online digital platforms. But now it's as if the plug on the real world has been pulled out, and this is all that we're left with, at least for this next season. And I really do think it's going to have a marking difference, even if this everything comes back online in 6 months. Um, it still is going to have a real marking difference on our our ways that we do society on a whole. Iman, thank you so much for being here with us. Where can people find you? Where can people find even some of the information on the course?
Instagram, Ayman Itani, Twitter as well, and YouTube. Aymanitani, Ayman Itani, that's my name. So I've been sharing a lot of content on that in that regard.
Great. I'll have all those in the show notes. And so one closing question, and we're gonna kind of circle this all the way back around to where we started talking about kids, talking about parenting. If you had kind of one kind of shot over the bow for parents who have now found themselves with their kids out of school, their kids home, and what would be one kind of shot of advice that you would give them to say, hey, in this season of time, if you want to pour into your kid, this is kind of one direction that you might advise someone to take it?
I would do it I would do it in a simple way. I wouldn't tie it to business or anything like this. I would tie it to what we usually are. We usually are busy parents trying to juggle everything, work and our partner and our kids and everything else. Some aspects of that have slowed down in the current situation. So what I would try to do is to spend time with them to understand what they like, and then go down that rabbit hole, go down that path. So whatever it is that they're interested in, open up some YouTube videos together. Some articles, read the articles as an adult and read to them and understand from them and why and things like this. So, and then figure out why they like it and then go down that path, because now we have a little bit more time to do so than we usually do. Because what I would do before is I find a YouTube video and just send it to them, and I hope they'd see it, and then I move on with my day to day. What I would do differently now is I'd actually watch it with them and then pause it and because what we do as adults, we just go through things. With them is they have questions, so I pause it. So I was reading today with my kid something, and then he said, I want to ask you something. I did the mistake of saying, look, I'm on the last page of the chat, let me finish it. And I was like, the whole point of me reading is to get him to ask me questions.
Yeah,
I should have thought about that. So that slowness that I think as adults, we don't, we rush through things. So that part, when it comes to our kids, if we're able to do that, just to go down that path of some small things that interest them. I'm going through my kids, they follow some 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds on YouTube and 11-year-olds, and I'm watching those videos. I have no interest personally in those, and some of them really bore me because obviously I'm a,
right,
about 40 male, and I'm not target audience. But I go through this, like, why is their cat missing? What's that problem? What's the name of that? Why are they like this, their brother and sister? And just I go through that discussion with them. I felt it has some form of impact and interest in the relationship with them.
Yeah, I think it would be really sad and unfortunate if us as parents, took this time and just stuck them in front of a TV and us stuck in front of another TV and didn't take time to pour into these relationships, the most important relationships that we have in our life, and bond and learn and discover who our kids are and help encourage them to grow and have fun. I think we're going to look back on this in 30, 40, 50 years with our kids and talk about, oh, remember, our kids are going to be like, hey, Dad, hey, Mom, remember when back in 2020? Oh, yeah, I survived 2020. Grandkids, you survived 2020? What did you guys do? Oh, we played for 2 weeks straight. It was awesome. So I think we would be really amiss as parents to kind of try to push something or even just like put them off to the side when we could really have a really amazing memory from this season of life?
And don't get me wrong, I had my days where like, here's the iPad, let me be for a while, I can do something else.
Absolutely.
But
Hey, if we do it
yes,
even
whenever I
20%, we're
can
good.
steal good time with them, that's when I'm able to squeeze those in.
Well, Ayman, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. And it was a pleasure talking, and just so many real tangible, actionable steps and insights that so many of us are going to benefit from. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me on your podcast, and thank you for not giving up on creating your content. Continue to create your content and reaching out to people to create content during this period, because it's easy to be discouraged, to say, let me wait and see what's going to happen, and nobody's going to judge me if I don't do anything. But I'm happy to see that you're able to continue to push through.
Thank you. And I've noticed that you've definitely stepped up your content game in the last couple of weeks. Just a ton of videos are coming out, and they're so good. They're so good. So I'm enjoying the extra content from you as well. So thank you for doing that. And that is all for today's episode. Please go and check out Ayman's stuff. He is brilliant, super helpful. And I hope that some of these key takeaways at the end of the episode, that you will actually apply them to your business. One, how do you stop the bleeding? How do you stop excess finances from going out of your account? How do you then reposition to have a no-touch solution for the next 18 months that you can carry on as an extra line of income into the future? And the third thing, think about and to ask yourself is, how can you essentially in your mind close your business and reboot it, restart it with a whole new set of constraints that we live in today? So that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much. And if you found this episode meaningful, please share it with a friend. That's all for today. I'm Lucas Skrobot. You are a change maker. And remember, if you own your story, you will own the future.